Hi everyone, and welcome back to Season 8 of the Propcast. I'm Louisa Dickens, your host of the Propcast and co-founder of LMRE, the global PropTech recruitment and search consultancy. The aim of each episode is to introduce you to a PropTech innovator and discuss how their work has created a shift in focus when it comes to digitalizing the built environment. If you're interested in finding out more about PropTech or applying for a job in this space, or keen to know who the big players are that are moving and shaking the real estate industry, we have you covered. And we'll be bringing you an episode each week to connect you to the VCs, PropTech startups, and real estate professionals from around the globe. Today on the Propcast, we are talking about the growth of the Italian PropTech market and how to redesign the experience of buying and selling residential homes. Today, we will be speaking with the Casavo team, CEO and founder Giorgio and CPO Fausto. Thank you both for joining me.
Thank you very much, Louisa, and super excited to be here with you, the Propcast. So looking forward to tell you more about Casavo.
Thank you for inviting us, Louisa. I'm sure this is going to be a very nice chat. Looking forward to your questions.
Awesome. Now, today on the show, we're going to hear from them about their journey to founding Casavo, which was back in 2017. We'll learn about how the product enables residential community to buy and sell quickly, conveniently, and simply. Now, this is the first podcast on the Italian PropTech market, and those who are not familiar with it, it's been growing rapidly. Since 2018, the number of PropTech companies operating in Italy has been doubling year by year. I think Unisu showed some stats in March last year, and which said Italy was home to 120 active PropTech businesses, and this is only set to increase. Now, Giorgio will talk us through their Series C in this as well, which was back in March last year, which has allowed them to grow across the main cities in Italy, whether it's Florence, which is where they were sort of originally from, Rome, but also internationally. And Giorgio will be sharing some super exciting news with us in a moment. And Fausto will explain how they've adapted their product as well as their marketing technique to different European markets. Lots of founders listening in. I know this is the problem you guys come across, and it's difficult and it requires a lot of research. Basically a lot of sort of specialist skills. Now, none of the above would be possible without growing a top-class team, and Casavo now have a headcount of over 300 people. And I appreciate talent shortage is a recurring theme in this podcast, but Italy, as I briefly alluded to earlier, is way less developed market than other big tech cities, hubs, which we might have spoken to some founders in the US, say France. So recruiting here and in Spain and whatever city, which we're going to say, our country, is way more difficult. So whatever culture Casavo has created and how they bring people into their business, I'm really keen to hear a bit more about it. You're obviously doing something super special as well, because it's not just about the tech stack. It's not just about the product. It's about the people, the family sort of creating. So without further ado, Giorgio, I'd love to hear a bit more about your journey. Founding Casavo, you've studied globally, you've worked for one of the leading consultancies, Boston Consulting Group, on digital transformation projects. Where did your passion for residential tech come from?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I'll tell you a bit my story. So I grew up in a very small village close to Florence, from a family of small entrepreneurs, which is pretty, let's say, common in Tuscany. And so I've been lucky enough, let's say, to inherit that passion for real estate and entrepreneurship in general from my father, what we call in Italy, the bricks fever. So that was one piece. And after, let's say, spending my childhood in Tuscany, I moved to Milan at Bocconi University, where I studied business, and abroad as well in the US and Hong Kong. And during my studies, I had a true passion for entrepreneurship. So I had the chance also to meet, especially abroad, several startups. And I also joined some of them as an intern during my studies. So that was the first time, let's say, I got in touch with that ecosystem, which for me was extremely fascinating. And then I finished my studies. It was clear that I wanted to become an entrepreneur, but not really what to do. Specifically, I hadn't found yet a big opportunity. And then I think was after 2 years working in consulting, I was looking at what was happening in residential markets globally and looking at Europe, where there hasn't been really a lot of innovation over the last 10 years. So I decided to found Casavo, and I think it was due to a lot of things, but mainly my passion for the intersection between the real estate world and the technology world. And on the other hand, that kind of naive ambition to build a category-defining business that could potentially redesign the boundaries of the whole market.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. I think this is something that we all share who listen to this podcast. This is what it's on. It's all about bridging that skill gap, but also that education gap between the real estate world and the technology world. So you're on the perfect podcast. Now, for our audience, Fausto, you're the CPO and there's no one better to talk to us about the product other than you. And then obviously you came from the sort of marketing world and you've moved into the product, which lots of people want to do. I'd love to hear how you made that transition. And you can, after you've told us about the product, are there any sort of tips for people looking to move over into product as well?
Yeah, so I can tell a little bit my story as well. I actually already had a career in product before joining Casavo. I had experiences in Florence and in London, but my main area of focus previous to Casavo had been the travel industry. You know that if you look at startups being born in Tuscany, it is quite reasonable that they would be focused on travel since travel is such an important source for the local economy. The point of travel was that most of the disruption was already happening when I started my career in product management. So when I was back from the UK, I reached out to Giorgio. Casavo had been founded by a few months, and he told me, look, I just launched a new business. I'm looking for someone in marketing. I had a bit of experience in that. So the project was so exciting that it was quite easy for me to decide to start with marketing. Then after 2 years, it was time for very serious and important investments in technology. So I went back to what I think is my core product. But I think that moving there from marketing gave me a lot of understanding of some dynamics that it would have been harder to get just as a product person at Casavo. So yes, this is the story. And now we are delivering on different innovations and on different sides for sellers, buyers, and brokers. The sellers audience is where we started from. And I think it's also the most mature experience that we can offer. And nowadays, what we offer to the markets is the ability to receive a purchase offer on their property without any kind of human interactions. And this is to close this story and just to tell you how I started my career looking at what Airbnb was doing, simplifying trips across the world, and how we are doing the same now in the real estate industry.
And since doing that, Giorgio, this could be for you. Who was your sort of first major client that you brought on board?
So I would say that, it's a consumer platform. So not being a B2B platform, we understood that in Europe, it's a seller market, right? So there is no presentation. And so everything starts from the seller. So we started with a very strong and disruptive value proposition in order to solve the issue of a very lengthy, inefficient, and inconvenient traditional selling process. And we did so by changing the paradigm and proposing ourselves to buy directly the home in a matter of days instead of going through the whole process. So our first client was, let's say, the first family who sold us their first apartment in Milan, where we started. And that was hard. It took us really lots of months of iterations and understanding the dynamics. I was 26 back then, so I had no expertise at all really in real estate, although I liked the industry very much. I was penniless, so I couldn't buy a house on my own, or I didn't have any house to sell. So it took a lot of time. So our first client was the first family who sold us their apartment in Milan in December 2017.
Awesome. The first of many to add to your massive list.
Hey, it's Michael Beckerman, CEO of CRETech and CRETech Climate. I hope you'll join us in Copenhagen for our first dedicated climate event on May 17th through the 19th. Only 200 of the world's leading sustainability professionals will be on hand at this event to connect, exchange ideas, and be inspired by world-class speakers. For more information, please visit our website, cretechclimate.com.
Now, let's also talk about your, I say recent raise, it's come up to nearly a year, but it's your Series C. And it was an impressive 200 million euros led by Exor Seed. And let's not forget, you've got some pretty other good existing investors, whether it's Greenoaks Capital, 360 Capital, Picus Capital, who continue to support your company. This is a serious amount, especially for European PropTech, and we're seeing an increase in investment flowing in. But what were the sort of major challenges when you looked to raise this nearly a year ago? How did you go about it?
I would say that within our space and within our industries, probably there were 3 key challenges. So the first one is that compared to other industries, digitalization in real estate is just really green. It's starting, right? So it's the largest consumer asset class, residential real estate, but still with a very low digital penetration. So I think that the amount of investors who are willing, let's say, to be the first one betting on that category and trend are still few, right? So there are not many that have built strong thesis on, let's say, PropTech in general. So that's the first thing. You have to start from the early adopters and from the most sophisticated investors, which are the most challenging ones, of course. The second challenge, I think, has to do with the fact that we started with a very, let's say, asset heavy model, which is still our core. And that requires certain level of understanding of the balance sheet dynamics and the residential dynamics in order not, let's say, to be scared by volatility. So it's a local play real estate. And so it requires not only, let's say, to have that kind of view on what technology can enhance in terms of addressing a generational shift in consumers, but also what's the underlying there, right? And so I think that was the second thing. And a third thing was the fact that we are a leading technology company in Italy, but still the ecosystem is pretty underdeveloped if you compare it to other markets. So it's true that capital markets today are clearly global, not necessarily true 4 years ago when we started, and that entrepreneurs can be found everywhere. But the reality is that not all the investors have the capacity or the willingness, let's say, to build global thesis, being able to drill down on specific markets, which are not like the US or the other, let's say, most obvious ones. So I would say these were the challenges, but I think it always starts with the team and with a clear vision and executing well on that vision. And so building strong relationship with that investor community from the very beginning and showing a really, let's say, strong market thesis and why it makes sense compared to other regions globally.
On that topic of regions, Fausto, you've obviously helped grow the product in different markets. I'd love to know a little bit more. Why was it so successful in Italy? And obviously you've expanded to Spain as well. Is it challenging when you sort of grow and change the product? What are the differences and what the buyers and sellers want? But do you have to sort of change your marketing technique as well from country to country?
We have been particularly successful in Italy, first of all, because we are first movers with the AVM. AVM stands for Automated Valuation Model for the listeners. So essentially, we were the first ones in Italy to provide free online real-time evaluations of residential properties, right? So it was news in our ecosystem. Plus, we added to that a very strong value proposition, which was you as a seller can sell immediately to us. So you don't have to look for a buyer, get into a very difficult and long process. And I think the characteristics of the real estate market in Italy helped us a lot. That was our thesis, and I think it has been confirmed by the results we got. The sale process in Italy is particularly long in Southern Europe in general. A lot of counterparties involved, and it's very unclear. There is a lot of information asymmetry. So addressing all these pain points in the customer experience helped us grow the business in quite a fast way. And then on the other side, I can say that the residential stock in Italy is generally quite old. It has been built in the 60s, 70s, 80s. And we propose to customers renovated, nicely looking apartments, and also, when feasible, with the right size, right? So in the 60s and in the 70s, apartments were generally larger, and now we look for smaller spaces. So I think we, of course, tried to give to the market what the market was looking for. Then for the second question, yes, there are some differences. What we want to do is to build a European platform, so a single platform in terms of products. But of course, there are some local nuances, both in terms of product development and in terms of marketing, I would say. I can make a very real example, if you like, about a feature that we have developed. So in Italy, it's quite common for sellers to have a floor plan of their property, an official one, while this is totally uncommon in Spain. So when we developed our feature for smartphone to enable sellers to share with us materials about the property, such as pictures, the floor plan, which was our tentative, then successful tentative to keep the property inspection. It worked totally fine in Italy. And we discovered that in Spain, we couldn't ask for a floor plan. And so our algorithms and our specialists couldn't get an idea of the size and how the space was distributed within the property. And so we had to develop a slightly different feature, which involves the recording of a video by the seller. And so this is an example. Of course, there are also marketing nuances, but in general, I have to say that we are finding that at least Southern Europe well receives the same kind of inputs and products that we develop in our headquarters.
I was doing some research the other day. Can you believe it that some of the biggest companies in the world didn't exist 30 years ago? The likes of Facebook and Uber. On the other hand, real estate is a total juxtaposition, being the oldest asset class in the world. We often hear about the property industry being a slow mover, and the need for PropTech is clear to improve solutions and take advantage of the data being gathered. We saw 21 billion in investment into PropTech in 2020, and it was predicted a further increase of 25% in 2021, which has already been surpassed, which means there'll be plenty to talk about when it comes to the innovation of the built environment. EY reported that 53% of real estate owners think that they don't have the in-house talent to adopt technology successfully. Without technology-minded talent and leadership, the implementation and widespread adoption of your product might be proving tricky. If that is the case, we are here to help. So head to our website, LMRE.tech, and we can find the right talent for your company's needs. And Fausto, you also mentioned, obviously, the selling process and by obviously being extremely slow in Southern Europe. I mean, I'm looking at buying, I don't know why, I bought high, sold low, and now I'm going through the whole process again. And in England, it's still a very, very long process. I'm intrigued to know how long is long for Italy if you're buying a property.
I'm pretty sure about selling one. We have official data on that side. And in general, in the large metropolitan cities in Italy, the time needed is around 6 months. And more or less the same applies to Southern Europe in general, Spain and Portugal as well, although I think there are slight differences. To buy a house, I would say that it depends very much on what you're looking for. For sure, Milan is a very dynamic and liquid market, so it can be very, very hard to get what you want. And it takes a long time because opportunity are simply immediately taken by the market. Probably on this, Giorgio can share also more light as he knows the dynamics of the specific markets better than me.
Yeah, I mean, as you were saying, I think the problem of selling a home is not something like Italian specific or Spain specific. It's a global problem. And like, as you said, it applies to UK as well. We just think that given the specific frictions in our markets and let's say slightly higher inefficiency in terms of days to sell, average brokerage fees, level of price transparency, that was the perfect place to start in order then to expand to other markets. I think that the key element and common denominator, if I have to look at continental Europe and Southern Europe, is probably the fact that because there is an absence of a centralized database of historical transaction, that creates a lot of information asymmetry and reduces that capability to match in an efficient and seamless way fragmented supply with fragmented demand in the market.
So whilst we're talking about different markets. Now, Giorgio, I think you have some exciting, obviously, news to share with us about a potential another launch into a different market.
Yeah, you're right. We just launched in Portugal. So that's our third country, starting from Lisbon. We actually started operating in December, but we announced it these days, actually. And for us, it was, let's say, we started our internationalization journey pretty early on, beginning of 2020 in Spain, going there from Italy. We had a lot of learnings. We managed to really build a launch pad and a local, I would say, organization that is able to leverage scalability within centralized products, but at the same time, being able to spot on and effectively localize our value proposition. And so on the back of that, we made another move and then going from Spain to Portugal, which shows a lot of, let's say, similarities to Italy and Spain when we look at those market inefficiency drivers. And so really excited to become the number one next generation residential platform here in Portugal as well.
Well, it's very, very exciting. So everyone check it out. And also there are nearly all the most beautiful cities in Europe. So do check out their platform. We'll be sharing those details at the end. Now, we've obviously spoken about the difference in marketers, obviously launching, raising, and we can't forget the team which has helped you do this. And team is everything in when you're growing a business. How have you managed to grow your headcount? You're over 300 people. That might not be an accurate number. And how have you done it? And I would love to know a bit more. So what are your cultural values? Because that often ties in really closely to it. This one could be for Fausto, could be for Giorgio, don't mind.
I'll take it, Louisa. So it was a hyper growth journey, and it still is, not just on business side, but clearly on people, right? Because in the end, that's the baseline of everything. And for us, and for me as an entrepreneur personally, I mean, this has been like my personal mission from the very beginning. So being able to have an impact on the market, build a category defining business, but with a strong team and building really a talent hub within our markets, all sharing the same vision from the very beginning and being relentlessly focused on executing on that vision. And so I was always like very, let's say, keen on investing on human capital before technology and business. So that's I think something that we really care about. As you said, yeah, we are more than 350 people actually now as an international team across all our markets and let's say functions. It's been difficult. I mean, especially like when you start going from 50 to 100 and then from 100 to 300, it changes everything. It requires really big, humble understanding that your role, in my case as a CEO or whatever other role, really needs to adapt on the back of that stage of growth, but at the same time, making sure that you have that universal backbone of values that are commonly shared and define, let's say, the behavioral baseline of the whole team. And so I think that especially in our environment where like you are growing at the speed of light, launching new products, new markets, you cannot afford processes. I mean, you have to trust people, you have to empower your team and let them do what they think is the best for the company. And so this implies that because processes cannot apply, they need to rely on something else, which is of course our vision business-wise, but also a shared set of very strong corporate values. I mean, we have our list of values and we live and breathe them every way. So we really care about substance before narrative. But probably if I have to summarize them in core themes, the first one is really focus on customers, meaning that our customers come first and we really want to create long-term value for them by challenging the status quo through technology. The second thing is we all share a very strong drive, I would say, to innovate, meaning that everyone is excited about contributing to our mission and feel truly empowered to take decisions in that sense. And third, we really like to learn a lot from each other. So we say we learn to adapt, meaning that continuous, direct, upfront feedback for us is really paramount to constantly grow as a company, but as humans even more, right? So we are all very young, starting from myself. So we need to be humble, learn from each other, give peer-to-peer feedback in order and well receive and act on that feedback in order to constantly grow and raise the bar of talent within our company.
Yeah, well, everything you sort of just mentioned, then it all sounds all about being inclusive, working together on the sort of same mission, which obviously is something which all businesses have to focus on. And it's, I guess, when you have 350 people, making sure you're all aligned on the same sort of trajectory is difficult. So I guess that constant sort of open communication and going down to your core values and make sure they're aligned the whole time is super important. Obviously, as we all know, the Italian market, the Portuguese market, the Spanish market. There's plenty of talent there, don't get me wrong, but it's definitely at its infant stage. So as you guys continue to grow, no doubt you will manage to attract them from other industries as well, whether it's hospitality, the finance sector. I don't know. We're seeing plenty of movement of people into this space as it becomes a lot more attractive. And at the rate your business is growing, I'm sure plenty of people, whether they're on the tech side, the marketing side, will be looking to make a transition. Now, before we get to the LMRE part, I have two final questions for you guys. So, Giorgio, is there any bit of advice you would give for aspiring entrepreneurs?
I would say just jump and do it. Sometimes I think that, at least for me, like becoming an entrepreneur was definitely not like a rational decision making, although I think I'm very like fact driven in how I take decisions, because there is an emotional component. So you have to feel it. And if you start to analyze everything and overthink it, it's not going to work. So you have to take risks in a very naive way. So I think we have characteristics in Casavo that we call sharing that kind of naive ambition. And I think that this is what I usually suggest. And in general, be like optimistic, right? As an entrepreneur, you need to always be positive. Like we started operating in an underdeveloped tech ecosystem such as Italy, but I see the half full glass, right? So there is full of talents. There is not a war of talents. As long as you do something, even if it's at a small scale, you get a lot of recognition and support. So always try to, let's say, even if it's challenges, turn them into opportunities and look at the half full glass always.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Giorgio. And Fausto, okay, let's talk about what's next for the Casavo product. Are you planning developing any new technologies? You guys obviously very exciting launched and about to launch in Lisbon. By the time this comes out, probably have launched. What's next for Casavo?
Yeah, I think it's always important to have in the radar new technologies that could lead to disruptive innovation in the market. For example, I think that, people are already speaking about this. Blockchain in general and everything around the metaverse are interesting topics when it comes to real estate. But this said, I think that, as Giorgio mentioned before, real estate is just the beginning of the digitalization process. So I think there are a lot of existing technologies that should be applied to all problems. I think, for example, of data science, machine learning in general to properly match supply and demand. And we have a specific focus on data as pricing is, the ability to price a real estate asset is and will be one of our key capabilities. I think for us, the challenge here to be able to make portfolio-based decisions and market-based decisions for our investments rather than transaction-based ones. And also we have to keep in mind the changing consumer preferences that will affect the price properties. So on the other side, I think that in the end, it's about creating a simple experience for home sellers and home buyers. Again, I like a lot the parallel with the travel industry. To remember 20 years ago, you had to go to a travel agency if you wanted to go to Japan. While today, everything is quite easy. You can book a ticket with your smartphone and then get an apartment on whatever platform you like. I think that level of simplicity is what we are looking for in real estate, and it's where we will keep investing.
Yeah, well, the simpler, the quickest, cheapest way of doing so, I think we're all in for that. You mentioned about the metaverse earlier, which I'm just constantly listening to nonstop podcasts and that and everything else. I read that the cheapest real estate, basically, if you want to get to the plot of land, the cheapest ones are now selling for something like $13,000, which I just think is probably pricing out so many sort of, well, say if people did want to even buy like an actual plot of land, I just find that whole sort of world crazy. But all these new platforms when it comes to obviously buying and selling property, the best, all these things, all obviously the digital artwork, which everyone's talking about at the moment, is just, it's not beyond me. I'm trying to learn about it, but yeah, I think it's super exciting what happens for, say, our PropTech community and the whole sort of digital future.
Hi, I'm Nelson from Property Quants. We run a hands-on, in-depth course that will teach you to apply data science and machine learning to real estate. To learn more, visit propertyquants.com/training. We also run a revolutionary course that will allow anyone to gain data science skills without needing to learn programming. To learn more about that, visit thenocodecourse.com. On either site, be sure to key in the code LMRE5 for a special 5% discount.
Now, the final part, guys, comes down to the LMRE part, and I will ask Giorgio 2 of the questions, and then Fausto, you can answer the final 2. So the L part is touch upon a main lesson you have learned throughout your career.
So I would say that the main lessons I've learned throughout my career, probably that the first one is that change is very important, and self-development as well, because the whole, let's say, world is changing in different dimensions. Our company Casavo is changing on different fronts and new markets and new products, and so you have really to understand how to self-develop and change how you work and how you fit a specific, let's say, role as an entrepreneur, for example, in my case, to fit those specific contingencies.
And right, this could be for either of you, because I'm sure there's plenty of people you want us to give a shout out to, or whether it's a product or whether it's in Italy, Spain, Portugal, I don't know. It could be someone who's actually from the beginning. Anyone you guys would like to give a shout out to? Maybe Giorgio, you can go first.
I would say I would like to, let's say, to mention a company in Italy which is doing a great job in the fintech industry. It's called ScalaPay. They are in the buy now, pay later industry. It's a pretty crowded one, but notwithstanding, they started after let's say, other larger, let's say, companies that they get a great job. They're executing very well. And I think it's a good example coming from the Italian entrepreneurial ecosystem.
Awesome. All right. Okay. The R part. What has been the most rewarding part of working in PropTech? Giorgio, do you want to answer this one?
Yeah, definitely. I would say that, let's say, the biggest personal achievement and the most rewarding thing was really to start with almost no understanding of this industry, which is very complex with a lot of incumbent players, very traditional, and then thinking about how to solve problems for our customers within this industry with a very like out of the box and naive approach. And that allowed us really to have a differentiated value proposition, which nobody was offering until then. So that I think was super exciting for me and for the whole team.
Yeah, I'm sure. A massive learning curve. And Fausto, right, finish it off. What are you most excited about in the future of our space?
Yeah, it's very similar to what Giorgio just said. I mean, the most rewarding aspect to me is the ability to lead this innovation in such a huge and complex market. The thing I'm most excited about for the future is that the next 3 to 5 years will lead to substantial change in real estate. And at Casavo, we really have the opportunity to be at the forefront of this change. So it's very connected to what Giorgio just said.
Awesome. Well, from the way I see it, you guys are probably the fastest growing Italian PropTechs to date, and it's super exciting. So congratulations on that. I'm hoping to maybe see one of you when I'm out in Italy in a couple of weeks' time, or if we can't do that, because you'll be launching in, say, Portugal, I'm going to be grabbing every single tip of you for restaurants in Florence because it's my first time and I can't wait. But it's been an absolute pleasure learning about Casavo. Looking forward to hearing further good news about your growth, and I'm looking forward to catching up with you after the show.
Thank you very much, Louisa. It was great to be part of the show. And yeah, I'll send you those tips for restaurants in Florence. I think food there it's quite good.
The dream.
Thank you, Louisa. Just I wanted to inform you that I'm vegetarian. So depending on what you're looking for, you should ask Giorgio.
I'm vegan. No, I'm joking. Thank you, guys. Thank you for joining us this week on the Propcast, and a big thanks to our guests and our sponsors, Cretech and Reamtech. Make sure you visit our website, lmre.tech, where you can subscribe to our newsletter, keep up our industry news and events, or if you're looking for your next career move, it's all on there. The Propcast can be found on iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube, where all good content is found. Whilst we're at it, if you found value in the show, we'd appreciate it if you could spread the word and tell a friend about it, or even write us a review. And I'll catch you next week.
Making high-quality podcasts like this takes a lot of work. That's a fact. But not when you hire Copus. With our white glove experience, we handle everything for you, from guest outreach all the way through publishing and promotion. We handle it all. You show up to hold great interviews like these and build relationships with your guests. We take care of everything else. Podcasting is not just about the audience. Every podcast interview is the start of a brand new relationship. With a weekly podcast, you would build relationships with 52 ideal partners or prospects through podcast interviews over the next 12 months. Do you believe 52 new relationships could grow your business? We do. Why not contact me today, jason@copus.com, JASON@KOPUS.com, and let's talk.